Hi, Natasha. So, in case you don't know us, I'm Maha Bali. I'm a professor of practice at the American University in Cairo's Center for Learning and Teaching.
And I'm Mia
And
Zamora.
I'm co-facilitator with
Yeah.
Mia, yeah.
I'm at Kane University, which is in New Jersey, just outside of New York City, where I'm a professor of literature and writing.
And the Curricular Seeds sessions are ones where we decided that we just all get together and share things that we do in our classes to teach the thing, you know? So last time we did it was intercultural learning. This time it's about critical AI literacy. And I create a Padlet. I share some of the things I do in my classes, and then you all get a chance to also share what you do. And if there's a 404 message for the Padlet, really? Okay.
Oh.
I'll send the longer link. I think I thought the shorter link would work, but it doesn't seem to work. So how about this one? Does this one work? Yes, awesome. Tell us how you're feeling today first, or how you're feeling about AI these days, even. That's a question I ask a lot of people as well. You can say it in the chat or say it out loud. We're a medium-sized group, so how do you feel about AI these days? Wonder and despair.
That's a good combination.
Hmm. Effie,
I feel resolute and also resent.
kind of over it.
Yeah.
Boring.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not feeling so much wonder, I think, anymore. Frustrated, Sabine.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. When I asked this question, welcome Noha as well. Trying to build a resource for online faculty struggling with how to address AI with them. Yeah, there is an event that Lance Eaton is organizing. I don't know if any of you are educational developers, you'll want to attend that one. And it's got that question of spectrum. Like there's a session that I'm co-facilitating on how do we deal with that spectrum of faculty who have very different views on AI, and it's pretty polarizing. And I think anybody who's an educational developer is struggling with this right now, right?
Mhm.
And I try to do separate sessions, but people still show up for the sessions they're not supposed to show up for. I do one for beginners, and I get people who've been attending sessions for 2 years. We do one for just humanities people that is supposed to be more critical, and then some of them decide to take a business view. Just really difficult to. I think we need to name the session something so off-putting for certain people that they wouldn't come. But anyway, I prefer to ask people what's a metaphor for AI you would use as a proxy for their attitude. So that's what I do in my classes. For students, I do it with faculty members. So the question for you, and I sometimes, yeah, you're reading that now, aren't you? Norton Guide to AI Aware Teaching. That's a good one. You want to put that in the Padlet, Jenny, so people can access it. I know some of the authors are pretty good authors because they cite me. No, it's because I work with them a lot. They're good people. Mark Watkins and Derek Bruff and Ed V. So that's the Norton Guide to AI Aware Teaching if someone's watching the recording. And Jenny's saying they're doing a perusal read, so you can read along. But is it not free? It's perusal, it might not be free. Is the book available open
It's
access?
$15
Hmm.
Yeah.
to read
Yeah,
along.
but
I'm
the difference
hoping,
between $0 and $1 for people in Africa is the same as like 1 to 100.
yeah,
It needs to be
it's,
0.
yeah. I think, and I'm not 100% sure if it's required 15 or if requested 15.
Mm,
I didn't go that. I'm like, I can afford it. I will pay it.
yeah.
So I
No,
didn't,
and
but
institutions could pay for it, right? Like,
yes, and I probably
yeah,
could
I
have
mean, when I
asked.
want something, I ask my
But
library to get it. I
yeah,
go buy stuff that I'm going to use for work. I just ask the library to get it for me.
yes. But
Yeah.
this one, I feel like if I'm hoping when I get to the end that they'll offer you a discount on the paper version because it's not permanent access.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
I
That's
believe
true.
there is. I want to say it's 50% off because I'm in that
um,
that group
are
too.
you reading it too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Cool. So yeah, so maybe then
Yep.
still put
Yeah.
it
I will
in the
add.
Padlet. Okay, so let's do that activity about the metaphors. What's a metaphor for AI you would use? Oh, that's interesting. I know how that you're researching. All right, what metaphors of AI do you use? The one that's triggered this entire thing is that my mom, who is not an educator, she's a medical doctor, has nothing to do with technology. When she heard about ChatGPT, she said, "Oh, it's like fast food." And then you unpack that metaphor, and people immediately say, "Oh, yeah, it is like fast food, right?" So Rebecca's saying it's like sugar, so it gives you like a sugar rush. Sugar can be pretty boring too, right? On its own. Plastic, Sabine, yeah. Someone once said plastic surgery too. So plastic, yeah. It's also bad for the environment, so I think that's a good one because it has that element as well, like fake and bad for the environment. Water does not quench your thirst. Oh, I love that. Mia, this reminds me of what we used to say. If you put water on infertile land, it doesn't help anything grow, right? Adrenaline junkie, Beatrice, I love that. World calculator. Yeah. Slim makes things flexible. Sugar is something we need and crave, but too much of it is not so good. Yeah. Word calculator. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I was like,
Okay.
world calculator. Yeah, gotcha.
All right. So I'm gonna need someone to keep track of the chat because I'll tell you what I do with this. Some of you may have seen me do this before, but what I usually do with the metaphors then is I ask students or workshop participants to plot them on whether they're positive, negative, or mixed metaphors of AI, and whether they anthropomorphize or use it like a human or a semi-human, meaning like animal or android or whatever, versus non-human metaphors. And then when you do that, you get a very good idea of the attitudes in the room, you know? So I'll let students just do it on their own. But we're here together, so I'll just ask each person. So is the sugar metaphor mixed or negative, Rebecca? Is it mixed?
I think it is mixed, and I think the more and more I think about AI, I have to hold both, and I have to can't do either or. I have to hold both the
Yeah.
positive and the negative, and that's why I kind of
Mm,
like the sugar metaphor, is I think it's really relatable. Like I always talk to students about how the first time they went to a grocery store and they get to buy whatever they want, and you get to walk down. For me, it was walking down the cereal aisle, and I could pick any box of cereal I wanted, and it was so exciting. But then you quickly find out if you don't regulate yourself, you could really cause some harm. And so I like the metaphor of sugar because I think it's relatable, but I think it also kind of helps to link to their autonomy too, because I really want them to know that it's up to you. You know when you've had too much. And I don't want to
mm,
demonize it, but I also want them to know that they have a lot more accountability than they may feel.
mm. I also This common one, right? It's in the literature, but what do you mean by scarecrow? Is that positive, negative? Semi-human, definitely, because it looks like a human but isn't. You can explain in the chat if you can't unmute, Natasha.
Well, a scarecrow is kind of, I'm just going to step in and think this from my perspective. It might not be what Natasha was thinking, but I just will say that it sits in a field supposedly scaring off the natural creatures who would want to be in that
Mm,
environment, right?
mm,
But after some time, everybody discovers it's not doing much anyway, meaning
mm.
that the birds realize that the scarecrow is just a hollow straw
So like
figure. So
imposter.
yeah, I think I'm not sure the way in which Natasha meant it, but I'm thinking about that angle of the metaphor. Um, I
I was also
also,
thinking that though you put that scarecrow on purpose because it's supposed to help you.
yeah, it's a
So,
sort of decoy that's supposed to do the work, but in the
yeah.
end, you know, things unfold maybe at first it's doing some work, but in the end, it's not really effective on some deeper level.
Hey, Amir, what about water that doesn't quench thirst? Is that a negative one?
Yeah, I think that what's interesting about that particular metaphor when we think of an image of, maybe like agricultural ground or garden ground that is so parched, so dehydrated that it won't accept rain any longer. Like it can't become nourishing, rich, nutritious earth any longer. It's sort of sealed off, so to speak, by the environment being so off for so long that it doesn't quench. I feel like that we're dealing with a cultural context for human gratification that already is like that scorched earth, that dried out earth that won't accept, and absorb. So I think that would be an interesting, and it's negative, but the negativity is sort of a broader metaphor for what exists in culture before the tool that is making it so much worse.
I'm assuming plastic is a negative one. What is interesting here is that this group are not treating AI like a human. Like almost, I don't think anyone used it. Like Amita's telling you nailed it. Their slime makes things flexible. Noha, do you wanna? That's a more positive thing, right? I guess you mean it like you can do anything with it, like slime.
Yes, because I think I got this idea because I currently worked on a research that aims to explore AI applications in general. And I found many um, many things that could be beneficial for learning. So I think that it can fit in many environments. So I shaped it like
Yeah.
such. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think generative AI is like that. Like AI before generative AI used to be very specialized. Like it would help do one thing, like facial recognition or detecting breast cancer or something from scans. But generative AI has that flexibility and versatility about it. So I saw con man in the chat. I assume that's negative, Sabine, right? That's the human metaphor. And then there was word calculator, Justin. What did you mean by that one? Like, is it a good word calculator or a bad word calculator? Is that a good
Yeah,
thing?
I think of it that as like a positive, non-human metaphor because it
Okay.
really helps people see its shortcomings, right? And help people when they think of it as a tool that they can use, well, maybe they can understand where it's not serving them, other places where it might be, right? As opposed to a human like thing that has agency and one of my coworkers who I do a lot of work with AI, their contrasting metaphor that they use, and we throw these out together as to help people think about these things. She calls it a drunk overeager graduate student, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like it's a totally opposite way of thinking of it. Whereas like that for me is an unhelpful way of thinking about it. For her, that helps her both realize its potential, but also reminds her to double check. So it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of emphasizes the toolness of it versus giving it qualities that it doesn't necessarily deserve or that it's not responsible for. So yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, and the drunk.
I do think it's more, it's different than a tool. I don't feel comfortable calling generative AI just a tool. It's
Right, yeah,
different than
that's why
other tools.
the drunk overeager assistant helps because you talk to it like it's intuitive, like it's creative, because in many ways it does fulfill those things, but not in the same way that a human might, or like a trustworthy human might, right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
an
I
interesting,
like that one a
yeah,
lot.
it's an
Yeah.
easy way
And
to,
overeager because it's like it's almost like it means well.
yeah,
It's
oh,
just
of course. Well, at
Yeah.
least it speaks like it means well, right?
Yeah,
It's a
we don't know the
flattering
creators,
machine.
meanwhile,
Yeah.
but
It's constantly flattering you. Yeah.
yeah. So is that a mixed one or is it mostly negative? The drunk overeager intern one.
The drunkard.
Uh-huh.
That's a good
Mixed or
question.
negative?
She is very positive about AI. So I think actually she uses it. It's mixed. We'll say mixed.
It's mixed.
It's
It's
mixed.
like
Same with word
yeah.
calculator. Yeah, it's also, I guess, word
Yeah.
calculator is also mixed because it's
You
like
consider word
not what you
calculator
think
more
it is.
mixed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I
I
said
think
positive.
calculator is
Yeah.
interesting because, calculators are always right if you give it the right inputs, which is not the same with AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think yeah. Anyway, every one of these opens up a conversation about what we mean and how we look at it. And then if I have different students, sometimes students put the same word in different places and then we have a discussion. So something like, for example, genie sometimes comes up, and like a genie, sometimes you think, oh, it does whatever you want, but actually genies don't always do exactly what you want. They mess up a lot. So anyway, this idea of metaphors, we explore a lot in a paper that I co-authored with Yasser, who's here when he was a student. He's now graduated and he works with us at Equity Unbound. And Anuj Gupta and Anna Mills. And we write a little bit more about that. And we have our own, we have actually 10, I think, Yasser, were they 10 or 9 different, not just these two axes, like we have other things that we analyze all the metaphors on. And it just becomes a good conversation starter. And it's a way to know about someone's attitude without telling them directly what's your attitude towards AI. There was also Adrenaline Junkie. I like that one a lot too. Is that a negative or a positive one?
Oh, Maha, it's both.
It's both,
I
so it's
see.
mixed.
Yes, it's mixed. It's mixed
Yeah, and
in
it's
there. Yeah,
kind of human, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Where I mean, it's like, kind of strapping it or strapping into like a high speed digital roller coaster, right?
Yeah,
So the user is
I
chasing an
see.
immediate, more euphoric rush,
Yeah,
through the complex promptings, watching
yeah,
massive volumes of data at the same time synthesized in very, very little or minimal seconds, and
yeah.
this also causes a relentless thrill. And this show pushes these creative boundaries. However, you see it also as accelerating breakthroughs, yeah. But,
Yeah.
but the sprinting through this cognitive landscape, it's at a terminal velocity, which
Mm,
ultimately breeds like a dangerous
mm,
recklessness. So it's a mixture
wow.
of this cognitive stuff. So at the end of the day, you are looking at the high stakes, the how this extreme sports, technology
Mm,
turns into a volatile trail ride, right? But the
yeah.
line between the triumphant or the successes uh, and the total cognitive atrophy is
Mm,
terrifyingly thin,
mm.
very, very thin. So
Wow.
working through the
That's a lot
brain, the
behind two
rashes.
words.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
I'm so
Yes, the
glad you're here.
psychology is coming out. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you.
Mm.
So I'm going to share one more activity that I do in classes, and I do with faculty as well in workshops. And then I want to invite you all to also share other activities. Mia, I don't know if you had a particular one that you wanted to share. I have
I
other
have
things
some.
in the slide.
I have some things queued up, but I just would like to open it up first, and maybe
Okay.
I'll add some to the
Okay.
Padlet. But if there's a quiet moment, I do have things queued up.
Okay. Great. So the cake analogy. Jenny, is the cake analogy in the Norton book? I can't remember. Anyway, so I don't know if any of you have seen this one before. I mean, anybody who attends a lot of my talks will probably have heard of this one before. But basically, the idea is this. I ask people, this came up actually when I was talking to one of my cousins who was, a lot of these things come up when I'm talking to people who aren't in education, honestly. I was talking to my cousin who works in HR, and she was very concerned about the graduates and what skills they have when they come in because of what's happening with generative AI. And I told her, not everybody has to be a baker. So I usually ask people in the room who bakes and who bakes from scratch And then we talk about well, some people don't bake from scratch, and why don't they bake from scratch? And when would you use cake mix? And when would you buy something ready-made? And so usually people will say, oh, well, I use cake mix when I don't have time, or when I'm not a good baker, or I'm just in a hurry, or when I mix it up myself, it doesn't work so well. And I talk about the thing is, if you're training, you know the Netflix show Nailed It, where they decorate. It's mainly about decoration and not the cake itself. In that show, they don't bake from scratch. They give them cake mix so that they can spend most of their time decorating the cake. So I say, if you're a teacher or a student, you think about it. What's the learning outcome of this class? Is everybody going to become a baker and they need to be able to bake their own cakes and develop their own recipes? Then they need to bake from scratch and not use something like AI. But if they are cake decorators, they could use AI for the cake mix and then spend their time on the decorating part. But if we're teaching them to become like wedding planners, then they don't need to make the cake themselves. They can buy a ready-made cake or delegate it to someone else or buy it outright from somewhere else. And they don't need to make it themselves. They don't even need to learn how to bake. But in a classroom context, I always give the example of architecture students. When they're doing a maquette and they need to design something, a lot of times they'll buy these little plastic trees to put on the maquette to represent trees. We don't need to teach architecture students how to create plastic trees in 3D or whatever. They can just buy these and then focus on their design, you know? Otherwise, it becomes like paying someone to do your work. But the point is, what part of your work is not what we're learning here, and so it's okay to just buy it ready-made. And then the last one is a Twinkie, and the people in the UK don't resonate. The Twinkie doesn't resonate with them. But the idea is, if it's a kiddie birthday party, they'll be happy with a Twinkie. But what happens when students just give you something straight from AI and they don't do anything with it is they all look the same. They're bland, they're vanilla, just overly sweet, but not really meaningful and not unique and not special. And so I tell students, when you use AI and don't put any of yourself in it, it's like you're all giving me Twinkies and they're all the same. And then to me, it's a way for both faculty members to decide which parts they should tell students not to use AI, because that's what we're learning here, by the way, and that's what you need to be able to do in the future on your own, and where you need to be creative and invent new things. And I also want students to learn to use their own judgments. What am I? What am I hoping to become? And what is it that I would lose if I used cake mix instead of baking from scratch? And we talk about this a lot. And people who bake know, like when you use cake mix, you're not sure what's in the ingredients. But I also say, if we as teachers don't provide the equipment that students need to bake, room for them to make mistakes, the ingredients that they need, make sure it's affordable, make sure they have an oven, then we're encouraging them to buy it ready-made or to use cake mix, because we haven't given them the equipment they need and we haven't given them room to fail. I think most people who use cake mix all the time, I'm just sorry to be judgmental, are probably people who failed their first few cakes and then they just gave up, you know? Because it doesn't always work the first time. It's normal not to be good at something the first time you do it. And we talk about that too. And if they're going to rush to AI as soon as they think they can't do something, then they're never going to struggle with it and learn it and then do it well. So that's how I use this one. Rebecca's saying this is an approachable metaphor. Yeah. And then sometimes we talk about, well, why do we even eat cake at all? Like maybe we should eat something else. It's a very, very Marie Antoinette metaphor.
Yeah.
And Sabine is saying maybe the shop bought cake metaphor might open up thinking about the ingredients of the shop bought cake. Yeah, would you still want to eat the shop bought cake if you knew the human rights abuses? I love this. I love what Sabine is bringing up here. I went into making it and the environmental damage by sourcing the ingredients. I love this. And this will also make you feel like, oh, I need to grow my own ingredients in my own garden kind of thing. And so should culinary schools have, vegetable gardens? I don't know if they do. They should. That would be so interesting. Thank you for that point. That's beautiful. I like it. No one's ever said that before, so I'll use that one.
The sourcing of the basis of the resources that are being used to make something new is a key connecting thinking process that we need to draw attention to, and lead our students towards. So I love that, just like the thought that the processes that we forego for other processes have like there's something behind these choices that are not always visible, and making them visible is an important part of the work we're doing when we're developing critical AI literacies. So like
Okay, let's
the
open.
cake at Costco has a whole lot of like, things that are attached to it that make it, what it is, and it tastes delicious and it serves its purpose and it's accessible, but it also has a history to it, and a politics to it that is deeply problematic. Yeah.
Mm,
Thanks, Maha,
mm.
for the article. That's um, useful for using this analogy
I
as
love
a
this group
starting
though,
point.
because the kinds of reflections I'm getting are so deep.
Hmm. For sure.
Okay, so yeah, so we'd love to hear from all of you. If you want to talk in, I don't think we're a huge group. We could divide into breakout rooms and people could share in breakout rooms, but I kind of feel like, what do you guys think? Stay here so that it gets in the recording and other people can benefit? Yeah. Okay, the people whose cameras are on are nodding. And, if your camera's not on, we don't know what you think. So you could, yeah, Sabine typed in the chat, so happy to stay here. Sabine. Are we pronouncing your name right? Is it Sabine?
It's well, it's complicated.
Uh-huh.
So my name's actually it's a German name, but my family aren't German, so technically I grew up like mispronouncing my own name.
Mm.
But I mostly go by Bean now.
Bean.
Yeah,
Okay.
Love
I
that.
Thanks.
think it's
Sorry to
technically I
put you
think
on the
it's
spot. I
Bean.
didn't mean to do that.
No, 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 no. No, it's fine.
All right, thanks.
To
All
start
right,
over, it's
so
nice to see you,
who wants to
Bean.
share?
Um, I'll jump in
Rebecca.
and share something.
I think Rebecca was about
Oh,
to.
good. Rebecca's here. Okay, good.
So something that I like to talk to students about that I've been more vocal about is just to talk about the process of learning and how learning is sometimes meant to be a struggle, and that's
Mhm.
okay. Because I think we get a mixed message a lot with AI, and I think a lot of the times I work in a college of engineering, so I teach a lot of technical students communication skills.
Mhm.
And the thing is like technology is meant to make our lives better and make our lives easier. But I want students when they're communicating to embrace the struggle, because I think the struggle is how we learn, especially the process of getting our message out to someone else. And so, an analogy I always use is for the last few years, my partner has been training for a triathlon. So if you're not familiar with that sport, it's three different events in one day. So you have a swim, you have a bike, and then you have a run, and it's a very intensive type of process for an athlete to do. And so I always use the analogy of my partner who he had a coach, and his coach would set up these workouts for him to do. And sometimes when he was doing a workout and he was being trained on his watch, sometimes the watch would not record the workout. And so he would have to manually input how long the bike ride was, how long it took him, that sort of thing. And so what I often like to talk to students about is that, he could have easily phoned in half of his workouts to his coach and just put in the information and not actually have done the workout. And his coach would not have known, right? Until he gets that starting line, and he would have needed to
Yeah.
have that training to get through the race, right? And so sometimes it's the
Mhm.
struggle that people don't see in the process of writing. It's that going over the drafts, but it's putting
Yeah.
in that time. And so I like to use that analogy because I think sometimes the things get sugar coated. And I even just now tell students at some point during this term, you're probably going to be frustrated with me because you're going to get some hard feedback and you're going to wrestle with the message that you're working with. But that's okay, because at the end of the struggle, you're going to get to that race. And so it's kind of a useful metaphor in some kind of way, because I think um, I can't remember whose work I read about this. I think it might be John Warner's book, but he was talking about how there's this implicit message when we look at that little blinking cursor, and then all of a sudden it just spits out this message. And I don't want students to internalize that writing is meant to be without that process of putting in those bike rides, putting in that time on the treadmill. So it's been a useful metaphor in some kind of way. But that's one way that I've been trying to talk to students about, having some personal responsibility with when they use AI. But I also like the analogy of cake. So if I can maybe balance the training of a big athletic race with cake, maybe that can be a way to hold both of those metaphors. But that's one thing that I do in my class.
And just to extend what you're
I
saying,
love that,
Rebecca,
Maya. I
for a
fully
second.
agree.
I just wanted to add to what you're saying for a second, because I think it's very important for sure. I love the idea of just pausing on productive struggle as something that really needs to be developed. But it's like a deeper challenge as a teacher, as their professor, to create an environment where the actual productive struggle is something fun and a context of trust, where they're doing it together in connection and collectively in a way that levels up everybody, rather than just intellectually understanding, if I struggle with this, it's okay, it's part of development. But a lot of them understand that intellectually, but still, when it comes down to it, don't want to be in that discomfort zone. So then how do we bring that into community in a space of trust where it becomes actually what we're all doing together? So I'm just like, in a way, kind of taking that baton, like we're
Yes.
running and you pass me that baton, and I'm leveling it up to the design
Yes.
around that collective experience of productive struggle that is rewarding and not emotionally connecting us together, rather than, you know, did you master this? Let me give you an exam. Let me see it.
For sure,
So
for sure. And I think that's such
yeah,
a useful clarification, because I think that's kind of
yeah,
already in the back of my mind, but I think it is important to like vocalize that
Mhm.
too, because
Yeah,
like a big part of my classroom too is creating this community of care where
yeah,
students who may be internalizing a story that I can't write, I
Mhm.
can't do this, feel safe enough to take those risks. Feel
yeah,
safe enough to recognize that if you don't get it right the first time, you can try it again, as long as you think about it and you don't beat yourself up. So,
yeah,
yeah, I think that's a really important qualification to it, is to, yeah, embrace the struggle, but also to know that you're not alone. Like, we're all here alongside
yeah,
each other, and
yeah.
it's meant to be a community thing. Like, yes, you're doing some individual things, but we're also here as a collective. So thanks for that qualification for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when we have discussions within MyFest, and B, I know your hand is up. Within MyFest, we know that most of us come from the same foundation of care towards our students and that
Yeah.
we care about justice. And so when we talk about this, we mean that, but I know if I'm talking to engineering faculty, oh, they'll say, yeah, let the students suffer in order to learn. And they don't think,
Yeah.
well, some of them are suffering more than others, and it's really not
Yeah.
fair. It's the people who have accommodations that say, oh, no, let them suffer. I mean, it's not like that, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I put something in the Padlet about your general points, and I also added some articles that I think are relevant to, like to the same ideas you're talking about and where friction comes in education, and someone else who
Mhm.
used a sports example, a sports training example. So hopefully that's similar to what you were saying. But if you've written it up somewhere, Rebecca, and you want to add it to the Padlet, please go ahead. Everything is frozen for me, but I hope you can all hear me, and let's
Mhm.
hear from B.
Um, so yeah, just it made me think about conversations I've been having with colleagues. We have like a kind of AI um, knowledge exchange group where people have been doing sort of little presentations on the ways in which they've been um, like engaging with AI in the work that they do in the library. And we had a really interesting kind of pairing one week of uh, some colleagues who were teaching AI on an undergraduate course, like teaching about like um, AI in a sort of from a sort of cultural studies perspective, like how are we grappling with AI, um, like as people moving through the world, and but also encountering students using AI in their assessments. And then colleagues, like conversely, using AI to generate kind of summaries on like the different kind of work achievements that people in the team had done over, just enabling sort of people across a team to know what other people have been getting up to, and writing these sort of like weekly summaries based on kind of transcriptions from meetings and stuff that people had held. And we we noticed that like it just makes such a huge difference whether somebody is like being upfront about having used AI, like in the context of these summaries that were being generated. The like colleagues were sort of like, I don't know, more forgiving of the mistakes, but like kind of more like there'd be weird things that would get thrown up in these summaries where the AI tool had kind of not quite understood what counted as a kind of success in the workplace, and it like pointed to a colleague like returning from work after a sick leave as like achievement of a work goal or something. But there's it makes such a difference, like it even just saying, having the first line of something be like, AI has been used to generate this, and it's almost like you're able to take that with a grain of salt. But there's a certain like betrayal that comes in when you read something that, like somebody is telling you, oh, I know I definitely didn't use AI to make this, and you read it and you're like, I can tell that you did, because your references have still got like ChatGPT in the URL. So like the feeling of like and yeah, like somebody trying to pull the wool over your eyes, and like just how like trying to kind of convey like actually like just being transparent about how you're using it makes such a difference. So like it's received so much more warmly, and like with interest in like, okay, maybe you're trying to do something interesting here with the way that you're using it, but just to pretend that you're not using it when you are, that feels uh feels bad.
Yeah, I feel that way too. It's interesting what you said. There's two things that came to my mind as you said that. One is apparently there is some research that people don't like to say that they've used AI because they're worried that if they say they've used AI, people will trust what they've done less. But I think what you're saying is more real, is like when you sense someone used AI but haven't disclosed it and been transparent about it, you get angry or feel like you've been betrayed or something. And I don't know if this is something that will continue. I mean, my daughter just can't stand AI generated images. She just feels like, how could you even look at it, kind of thing. And at the same time, I've had this happen to me a couple of times where people would send me, like, I'd be invited to talk somewhere, and then they'd send me, is this bio okay? And it wouldn't be my bio. And I was like, my bio is on my faculty website, it's on my blog. Why would you ask AI to create a bio for me when my bios are available publicly? If you Google it, it'll be like the second result. Why are you? And of course, the ChatGPT or whatever bio is not correct. Well, just ask me for my bio, I'll send it to you. Like, I don't get it. And I'm like, what is this? Is the AI generated? And nobody ever says, yes, it's AI generated. They say, oh, sorry, okay, we'll change it. Why are you doing that? And a lot of times there are people who are asking me to come and have a critical talk about AI. I don't get it. Anyway, sorry, I ranted.
That's okay. And I think there is an answer to why people are doing it in a way. And I think it's because they're tired and they, they, honestly, I think that it's because they're tired and there's a certain level of I can't cope that is like universal. And this is like the latest pill that can be taken in order to get through the day. Does anyone else want to share angles and strategies or ways of opening up conversation or pursuing literacy in the classroom around AI?
Well, Mia, you wanted to say something earlier.
Yeah, well, I could, but I have things, but so maybe I'll share screen. Let me do that first. And I have a few things. The first of all, this is a slide that Maha and I developed, but it's really from Teresa, one of our colleagues in let me put it in slideshow mode. Can you see that, everyone? I just am making sure everyone can see the slide. Okay, so this came up through reading a really remarkable book that was co-created uh, with like AI as a co-partner, and the scholar is Vanessa Andreatti, and am I saying her last name correctly, Maha? I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
she has three different names, but
Yeah,
Andreatta is one of them.
but so Andreatti is one of the Machado de Andreatti. But she has some really amazing books. One of them is called Hospicing Modernity. But she co-wrote a small little book with an emerging intelligence uh, that was named Aiden Cinnamon Tea. And there was a kind of discussion in this book around attitudes towards AI and then certain identities that, kind of develop around attitudes of AI towards AI. So Teresa, our colleague, sort of started to create a kind of laundry list, so to speak, of some of the like attitudes towards AI. And I think students find these compelling. And sometimes it's interesting to open up a class by kind of laying out some of these terms and then having everyone weigh in if they feel like they're a part of them is this kind of identity. So the identities are the instrument. I can't even speak today. Instrumentalization wizard. That's someone who might use AI for specific purposes, like an educational purpose or a political purpose or a religious purpose, but they're very specific in their use and it's ideological on some level. Then there's the playful chaotic identity, which is treating AI kind of like it's this like wondrous playground in which you can make things and create things, and it just opens up this font of creativity. Another identity would be the skeptical pragmatist, someone who's hesitant or cautious about AI use, um, generally speaking, and only use it where it works in very specific ways. Then there's the capitalist extractor, someone who wants to make a profit and knows that AI is a very useful tool and application for certain profit-bearing contexts. There's the data guardian, someone who's so fixated on privacy that that's their entry point all the time to thinking about the problem of AI in the world. Then there's the footprint alarmist. A lot of my students say things like, shout out to footprint alarmists. That's like, of course, someone who's really worried about the environmental and ecological destruction that comes with artificial intelligence. And so they're constantly focusing on the carbon footprint. And the use of it in daily practice is a sort of betrayal to, the environment that is so, at risk at this point. There's the shutdown brigade, someone who wants AI just to shut down, and they fear completely for the future of humans on Earth and Earth itself. But it's this idea of just no, like, I guess AI abstinence is another, identity I'm adding to the list. But then finally on the list is the human-centric purist. And those are people who see AI as a tool that threatens humanity's creativity, like the sacredness of what it means to be human. So it's an interesting list, and oftentimes students really think about all these different categories and they discern that they're a part of, or a part of them. They think of their identity almost like a pie chart in which a certain percentage of who they are falls into these certain categories. And the AI abstinent, stance is something that I think many of my writing students, I teach graduate students in writing studies. So they tend to be human-centric purists with a footprint alarmist kind of attitude, but then in the end, they want to like just pursue the whole thing, from an abstinence perspective, which we discuss a lot in regards to realism and, how to move forward in the world as it stands. So I'll stop sharing, but that's just something I wanted to share because it opens up a lot of angles on the problem of
I put
AI.
the
And
link to that slide deck in the Padlet in case people want to copy this and
excellent.
reuse it. And Amir is saying, here lies the importance of, I don't know what critical AI literacy, I think is what
Oh yeah,
CAI is,
yeah. I
to
just
teach and
figured that
equip
out too.
students with the skills required to navigate the use of AI with awareness, critical thinking, and ethical approach. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I honestly at this point feel like there's nothing we can do to stop them except they have to be able to stop themselves when it's the right time to stop themselves. They need to be able to make that judgment. I don't think there's anything we can do. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, definitely redesigning our assessment. But I mean, when they're at home, the temptation is there. But I don't know if, very young people are able to have that kind of self-control too.
yeah,
But I do notice it in my students towards the end of the semester. They'll say things like, well, I actually tried doing with AI and I realized this was taking me longer than if I just did it myself, or it's not giving me what I want and I do it better on my own. But, I don't know if they reach that conclusion every time or with everything.
yeah.
Um, but I think, yeah, having those attitudes to be able to refer to them again, right, later
Hmm.
is really
Yeah.
useful, I think, terminology.
There's another thing that I can share that's just like a different angle, and it's like thinking about external problems in the world, external dispositions versus internal ones, how we live in the world and, what we hold dear in our internal life. And I notice that students are very responsive to sort of thinking of these things. I'm going to share again for a second. And hopefully I can find where I wanted to go with that. Hold on. No, this is not what I wanted, but I'll be there in a second. Hold on. Um, oh no, it's in the other slide that I have here, but it's here, this slide. It's also in the same deck that, sorry, it's just slow, that Maha shared the link for. But basically, there's these fires that are burning in the world, but some of them exist externally and they overwhelm us, and some of them exist internally and we are struggling. So at the external level, like out the outside world, there's the ecological destruction that is so much a part of AI, and so there's readings that we can do and thinking about environment and data centers and ecological imbalance and how problematic that whole world is. There's also the like dark economies of labor practices that are a part of making AI, something viable for the mass public, specifically like data sort of cleansing centers where humans are employed to like get through data sets to take out the things that are violating, and it violates people at an emotional and psychological level for, cruel, below basic human rights standard wages. So there's that whole business. They have to learn about that kind of thing. There's the bias that exists in data sets. Again, this is external, but they have to understand in the ways in which um, deeply problematic values are baked into data sets. And then there's this kind of mythology around the inevitability of technology and specifically AI. So those are the external things that we need to think of that are part of critical AI literacies. But what about the things that we have immediate control over? That's where mindfulness and a sense of ourselves comes in. And so I often speak to my students about like what intention is in writing. When we write, we're struggling to articulate what we know or what we are grappling to know. And we're reaching tenderly towards words that might, in the end, shape our consciousness and shape an ability to connect with other people. That's what writing is. It's about finding the words for what we intend, right? And so it's such a tender thing, that idea of intention in writing. And so how do we manage that? Why would we like kind of outsource that whole exploration of what we think and why we think what we think and finding the words for it all? That's a big question. Why? Why would we outsource our understanding of our own mindscape? Um, Now, Rebecca brought up the whole idea of the importance of productive struggle in one's personal life. When it's hard, sometimes it's what makes us grow, or it is a critical ingredient in what makes us grow. So how do we get students to understand that as worthwhile in an experiential way, just like we were talking about earlier? Finally, there's a big discussion I've been having with my students around brain rot. And of course, brain rot specifically could be a content understanding, just like short content pieces that are just they make us feel numb. They're just nonsensical, and the variation of things that come in the algorithm just sort of lull us into a like almost like vacuity that is like very real. I mean, we're all susceptible to it. Anytime we lie down on the couch and want a moment of rest, but found ourselves doom scrolling or just scrolling through short form content, that is like an example of the experience of brain rot. And God knows it is pervasive. I don't want to say the students experience it. We experience, all of us experience that. So, what is the relationship between brain rot and the choices we make around AI? That connection really needs to be made, and made in a deep and complex political like stance as well as, and it starts with an understanding of our own intentions and a mindfulness around the habits we take into the world. So, and then speaking about things like burnout and dissonance that we experience, culturally speaking, and in terms of moving through the world, all these things are fruitful things to open up, make conversations around, and then pursue in some like kind of choices and thinking about choices we make in a way that becomes a part of the classroom. So that's my spiel on the external stuff versus the internal stuff, but the dispositional that's internal is just as important as the external, I think.
I like the framing of the internal versus the external because we have control over the internal much more quickly than we have control over all that external stuff. And we have to live in a world where these things exist, right? And preparing our students for a world in which these things exist. It's really a great way to help people focus away from what's happening out there and thinking about how you can exist in a world where these things are, I don't know what they're doing what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
I love your point because it's about recognizing where we have agency and where we don't, and then acting on the space where you do have agency. There's an author called Abby Awamoso. I'll try to get her blog here. And she was talking about how AI is not a tool, it's a medium infrastructure. And so it acts on us. And if we don't enact our agency, it will just act on us and we won't be able to do anything. So we need to be aware of where we have agency and where we can resist or reject or stop or choose the direction that AI is going to interact with us or how we're going to act with it. V, go ahead.
Yeah, I like that perspective, Maha, and everyone. But the other point is how many people know that they have that kind of agency. That is another argument. It's a lot of people may know or think they have agency, yeah, That is awareness, but there are others who don't have that kind of awareness to even begin the whole process in the first place. Process of interrogation, deep introspection, and all these things. Um, so until the lines are made that clear, these nuances will still be there until that major philosophical questions, to make people go deeper, to assert their agency so that they will know when and how to work on all these things together. Thank you very much.
And people don't even realize they're using AI when they're using AI. I was telling people, I realized that people who aren't in education sometimes don't even realize that Google is showing you the Gemini AI results.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
shocking. Yeah. I think, B, you have your hand up, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna talk about the like when we talk about critical AI literacy and like the external fires. I wondered about how we might. So something I've been thinking about a lot more is the conditions that our learners are in that make AI very tempting. And like, I work in the UK context, and we have like skyrocketing rents that mean that many students are having to commute longer distances to get in, which means that they've got less free time. They're having to take on additional jobs, which means they've got less free. So like their feeling of I don't have enough time is very real. And I mean, again, it's not something that like in an individual way I can have control over, but lending my support to campaigns, like students here organize a rent strike, and that like looking out for the kinds of campaigns that students' unions are running around the kinds of conditions that they're facing, and trying to like and yeah, like staying like clued in on debates around like student fees and the kinds of financial support that are available to students that they might not be aware of. Because I just really I feel like it's almost like the the gift of AI seems to have come at like just this horrendous time, like this point in time where students are like more under pressure to like they've got less free time than I was at uni like 15 years ago, and it just the number of students who are trying to complete their studies while working like ridiculous you know um, ridiculous workloads at part-time jobs is just immense. So it's like trying to kind of push back against the normalization of like, oh, of course you're just squeezing your studies around like working ridiculous hours and still feel like you're under financial pressure.
Yeah, exactly. It's like telling people get the cake ready in 30 minutes and you don't know how long it's going to take them to even get to the kitchen to make the cake. Do they even have a kitchen at all? Do they have another cake that they have to bake for someone else? Like what else is going on in people's lives? Then we create these conditions and then we find technical solutions to them, but they're social problems.
Yeah.
And it's same for teachers too, right? Like I remember a teacher once told me that she was asked to give the lesson plans for the entire academic year at the beginning of the year. Why? Why does she need to do that? Of course, someone will use AI to do that because it's doable. But is that really the thought out version of what you're going to do in your lesson? Why do I need it? Doesn't even make pedagogical sense to know before the year starts exactly what you're going to, especially for K to 12, like where the kids might struggle with something more than you expect or things happen. Yeah, things come up exactly, Christina. Yeah. Okay, we are at time, and I have another meeting in a short amount of time. I can stay for like 3-4 minutes if people just want to Maybe tell us what's something that sparked your interest today. Tell us in the chat or tell us out loud. What's something from what you've heard today you think you might be able to take back and start using right away? Guardian article, brutality of life as a foreign student. But
Sorry, it just made me think about this article I read a while ago about just the really exploitative recruitment practices, because in the UK the universities can charge a lot more for international students. So and like some of the practices around like recruiting international students have been really really dodgy, and yeah, so I see these things as kind of being like, yeah, I think, yeah, it feels like we need to understand AI in the context of like the whole kind of higher education landscape. So that's something I'll be thinking about.
Yeah, it didn't come in a vacuum. I don't know if you came to the session with Rowan Garnett and Lance Eaton, but Rowan asks, when AI came into your institution, what was already there in your institution that was, I think, limiting students' sense of belonging, so that they wouldn't go to office hours to ask for help, but they would go to AI because they feel more comfortable doing that, because they either don't know how to get to your office, or they don't feel comfortable coming to your office, or they don't feel welcome coming to your office. Like all of those things get in the way of people using something else. Getting help in other ways. I see people in the chat sharing the productive struggle is helpful, the metaphors. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day or evening or morning.
What other curricular seeds can we do? We did an intercultural learning one and a critical AI literacies one. And I don't remember if we scheduled another one without a topic or if we had one with a topic. Do you remember, Mia?
I forgot if we had 3 or 2, but these are nice just to have like an angle on something, and then
if any of you wants to, like, if you have like 2 or 3 activities on a particular type of thing that you think a lot of people might be interested in, and you want to do a session like this one, we could do it throughout the academic year. It doesn't have to be MYFest time. Could be, we're trying to make it, year round. So
yeah,
could see what topics people want to talk about. Okay. Thank you. All right. Sounds good. Let us know what you'd like to do it about.
for sure.